Greetings, planty people, and welcome back to my jungle. I hope you've had a lovely New Year's, and let's just roll on this next year and hope it's less chaotic. So following my last video, I asked if you guys would like to see a begonia tips and tricks video, because I know a lot of people do struggle with them, and I feel like I finally got it, and I've had no issues since. So I've got a whole list here of everything I do, and hopefully I can help you out. And if you've got any questions after the video, feel free to pop them down there and I'll help you out. So I'm not really like a begonia pro, if that makes sense. I just really like them, and this is just everything that works for me. So it might be different to you, but this is just like a nice basic list. Shall we start? Okay, so I feel like one of the most important things about begonia is the soil. Now, these guys can be quite prone to rotting, and I've also found them to be quite thirsty as well, so finding the right balance and having the correct soil is very important. So I found they like a nice well-draining soil, so the airier the better. Not necessarily super chunky like you would a monstera, for example, when you have loads of bits of bark in there, but more on the side of having lots of like bits of pumice in there, zeolite, or just loads of perlite really, and just like little tiny pieces of bark. Orchid bark's perfectly fine, just not too chunky, but airy, if that makes any sense. Now, I found that they don't like to be in a pot that's too big, so as they are prone to rotting, which I said previously, the more soil there is, the more water there's going to be in the soil, so you want to kind of reduce it as much as you can. They like to be quite snug in a pot, and when upsizing, I wouldn't upsize too big. I'd only go a centimetre circumference bigger, because I did upsize one years ago way too quickly and it melted. So don't do as I do, do as I say. And if you don't want to mix your own soil, I'm pretty sure Soil Ninja do a begonia mix, I think. They do a mix for basically anything. Check them out, they're really good. Okay, let's talk about light. Light is also very, very, very important for begonia. I found that these guys like quite a bright spot, like as bright as that you can probably get them without it being direct. So I keep most of my bigger ones downstairs where I keep all my cacti and succulents, and that gets a nice bright evening sun, basically almost direct sunlight at that point, and they are absolutely thriving. My Bonigo, the pink spotty one, is getting massive. My Tamaya won't stop growing, and my maculata is huge. So I definitely give it as much light as you can. They can probably tolerate a medium, but I don't reckon you'll get a lot of growth and success, in my opinion. Now, I do have my Begonia ferox behind me here. I know it doesn't look that bright right now, but I usually have my grow light on kind of the darker times of the day, especially in winter. I don't get loads of light in here. I'd say without the light it's like a medium, and I've noticed it's been absolutely loving being right under the grow light. I definitely recommend getting yourself a grow light if you're in a kind of darker situation and your plants aren't getting enough light and you're noticing a lot less growth. I do have a 10% discount for Grow Gang down below if you so choose. But yeah, lots of light, and also warmth helps as well. They love it warm. Make sure it doesn't get too cold wherever your plants are. Now, I know it's really expensive at the moment. I totally get that. As long as your begonia isn't in a really drafty spot or by a really cold window, temperature, you shouldn't really need to worry about it too much. Okay, let's talk about watering. Now, this is usually the part that people struggle with, and if you get it wrong, it can be detrimental to your begonia. So I found the best way to water your begonia. Yes, you can bottom water, but I'm way too lazy for that. I'd make sure it's at least a third of the way dry, maybe even half. Not completely dry. You don't want it to be crispy when you water it, otherwise it'll just be hydrophobic and the water will just like spill everywhere. You don't want that. So I water mine when it's like almost dry, but not completely dry, if that makes sense. And I personally just use tap water. I know that's a bit of a hot topic, but my tap water isn't hard water, so I've never had to kind of filter anything. But if you are worried and you want to give it the best chance, maybe get a water filter or even boil your water. I'm not sure on the science on that if you boil it, but apparently it helps get rid of some of the calcium in water. Don't quote me on that. I'm not sure if that actually works. A lot of people ask me how much water to actually water your plant, and to be honest, I kind of just eyeball it every time. As long as it gets a good drink and you can see the water go down to the bottom a little bit. You don't want it sat in the water, but you want it to have a really good drink so you can kind of flush the soil, and it will definitely thank you for that. You just don't want it to be, you don't want to drown it basically, and if it stays wet for too long, it will just melt and disintegrate and it won't be nice and you'll cry a little bit. Been there. And I personally like to fertilise my begonia basically every water, sometimes every other water, whenever you remember really, but I found they really like to be fertilised, like a lot, more than you think. Now there's a bit of a misconception that if you fertilise too much it burns your plants, but I've literally never noticed that. So let me know if that's actually a thing, because it just hasn't happened to me. And I fertilise my plants a lot because I want them to grow huge. So if you really want your begonia to get huge, definitely give it a lot of fertiliser. Not like a ridiculous amount, just like the recommended dose in a watering can, every water or every other water. It's up to you. Now the fertiliser that I like to use is the aquaculture one. Now this is the spray version. The normal liquid one's downstairs, but I'm too lazy to get it. It's made from seaweed, so it's rich in nitrogen, phosphorus and something else. I failed science, so I can't remember the last one, but it's just a natural alternative for your plants to grow huge, and they're really sustainable with how they do it. They pick up seaweed from the Cornish beach that would otherwise be just chucked away and rotted on the beach, so that's really nice. So check them out if you want a sustainable version of a fertiliser, or you just want to try something new. Okay, so let's talk about humidity. Now this one's a bit of a kind of awkward one because it really depends on the type of begonia. So for example, my Ferox behind me, a lot of people have that in a terrarium because they like at least 80% humidity sometimes. In here it's about 60-70 because I have a lot of plants and we're in the attic, so you know it gets quite warm in here. I've also found if you have your begonias amongst other plants, they love it a lot more, because when you water your plants and you spray them and stuff, it creates like a little micro bubble and it kind of protects it and increases the humidity. So maybe even group them together. That's a really good idea as well, and then you can kind of keep an eye on them all together. That's quite a good idea actually. Have a little begonia family. And another one that loves humidity is the Rex. The Rex begonia, there's so many different versions of that one. That one can be quite tricky because if it's not watered enough, it'll dry. If it's not humid enough, it'll dry and crisp. So definitely have that in a more humid place. And if it's below 50, I would definitely recommend maybe getting a humidifier. They do help, I promise. And begonia like maculata, basically the angel wing ones, I've noticed they don't need as much humidity because they're, I was going to say wings, their leaves are a lot thicker so they can handle drying out a little bit more. It's the funky ones like this, the Berkeleii, the Rex, Amphixius, they're all the ones that would love high humidity. And if you do struggle with that, maybe get yourself a cabinet or a cloche, or some people keep them in like jars. A big jar, but yeah, I've never actually experimented with keeping one in a cloche or anything. I just kind of put them amongst my other plants and they seem to be okay. Okay, last but not least, let's talk about propagation. So I found propagating begonia is super easy, and there's actually a few different methods of doing it. So if you're propagating a begonia maculata, literally all you do is chop a stem, let the end dry to reduce rot, and literally just put it in water and that's it. It should root in a week or so, and once it's rooted, I'd say 2 inches at least of root, then just put it in soil and it grows. It's actually quite magic at how easy it is to propagate them. Same goes for the kind of more fancy ones like the Berkeleii that I'm looking at over there. So that one, they have a lot thinner of a stem and they're a little bit more delicate. So same kind of thing, chop it, let it dry a little bit longer, I would say, and put it in water, keep an eye on it, and you should get roots coming out the bottom. Now, there is another way that I've never actually tried. So you can actually propagate from the leaf. I think I saw Planted by Rose Plants on Instagram, and she basically just chopped the leaf off and cut round and chopped those pieces up and put it in the soil, and it created little babies. Now, I've never tried that. Please let me know if you've done that before, because I'm really curious. Like, I want as many begonia as possible, and that's something I might want to try in the future. Yeah, so that's literally basically everything I do. I try and keep it as simple as possible. You don't want to overdo it with all these fancy utensils like moisture meter, can't think of anything else, but you know what I mean. Try and keep it simple. So a few key things to remember: brighter the better, just not full sun. Only water if it looks almost dry. And fertilise it, baby, like fertilise it as much as you can. And if you do all these things, you'll have a successful begonia. I mean, obviously there are a few things that can change, like pests and stuff, but let me know if you've got any questions, if I've missed anything out down below, and I will answer them as quick as I can. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video and I've helped you. I hope you've had a lovely new year, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.